So, hello everybody and welcome. This is one of our Zoom chats that we are doing to meet some of the amazing speakers that are going to be at our conference in November that we are really excited about. So this week we are going to be talking to Maria and Ash. So what we would absolutely love you to do is to tell us a little bit about you two guys and, what people might get from you if they come to the conference.
Okay.
All right. Do you want to start with that?
Yeah. Okay.
No pressure.
So a little bit about us. I suppose the first thing I'd love to say is that Maria and I, we're husband and wife. And we also work together. We run a small business, which is essentially leadership development. And that's either in groups or in one-to-ones. We live in Leicestershire. And you can pick up from here.
Okay.
I'm running out of stuff to say now.
I suppose you could say that the principles underpins all of the work that we do. It's like we do leadership development, but it's the principles that underpins everything. And we were talking just beforehand because we hadn't decided what we were going to talk about at the conference. We had this sneaky feeling that you might ask us.
Wow.
And we just thought to ourselves, it's like, what is it that we're seeing at the moment that's new for us? So the thing that we realised that we've been seeing is that how the principles underpin everything. Like even when, although, one of the things that we might say about what we do is that we share the principles or we help people to understand the principles. But actually, most of the time, we're not talking about the principles. We're just living the principles, and all the principles are living through us, whichever way you look at it. So I think maybe one of the things that we should talk a bit about is how the principles changed our lives. I mean, we were very lucky. We had a really good relationship anyway before we understood the principles. But it's like understanding the principles just makes everything a whole lot easier. So when, one of the things that we really want to do is help people to have easier lives, because when I say easier, it's like, I remember the kind of hard life that I had. It wasn't anything to do with what we were doing or the work that we were doing, everything. The hardness and the difficultness came from all the stuff that was going on in my head. So understanding the principles makes that a whole lot easier. It's like, it makes it a whole lot easier to deal with, and then there's a whole lot less to deal with as well. So, one of the things that we want to do with people and the way that we work with people is helping people to have a whole lot less stuff to deal with that's going on in their own heads that's making life difficult.
Yeah.
So,
if you think about working in the organisational world or in a company, it doesn't have to be a big company. Small companies can be just the same. And I find more and more these days, people, given the way of thinking about the world and given the frame of reference about the world, it can be really tough to work in an organisation. And lots of people are really struggling. They're struggling with all sorts of things. And one of the things that people are doing with the best of intention is they're trying to new interventions, new ways of doing things, different structures, different projects. And if you've been around an organisation, perhaps even just a few years, you'll notice that the same things come round every so often, but they're just called something else. And I'm not saying that, I'm not putting a judgment on that. It is what it is. But what I see it's a symptomatic or an indicator that people are running out of ideas. So they're just trying to do the same thing as what they've always done, but just maybe a slightly different way. It might be a different name. It might have different people involved in it. And so what we're finding is with lots of organisations is that they're, because of the environment they're operating, which is getting more complicated and more changeable and more pressured, they're looking for ways to do things, but they're not getting the kind of breakthroughs that in their heart they want to find.
The other thing as well is I don't know if I dare even mention the B word.
Has it got a T and an X in it?
It's got an X and a T in it, in no particular order. But, you know, people are talking about the uncertainty and not knowing and how that's causing a lot of difficultness. And I mean, a lot of organisations are just getting on with things. You know, it's like it's not within their control, so they're just getting on. But it is creating a lot of, or it appears to be creating an awful lot of angst in people's minds. And, you know, there's an easier way to navigate through that. It's like when people understand where the angst and the, not the uncertainty, but the difficultness of the way that feels, when they realise that that's where that kind of emanates from, it makes it easier to deal with all of that kind of stuff. And I don't think it's not going to get any easier anytime soon by the sounds of it. so
it's almost like one way of thinking about the way I'm thinking about it in the moment here is that things are, given the way that we think about things are getting more complex, more interconnected. Things are moving faster. Expectations are increasing, and wherever you look, you know, stakeholders, communities having higher expectations of organisations, employees are having a higher expectation of organisations. So the whole thing feels like, you know, it's just all, we're coming to a point where what the world needs, and I'm just talking about the organisational context, is a new way of going about things. And so we need to move beyond. Just working the same kind of ideas or a different take on the same kind of idea. We need to be able to transcend the way we're thinking, and the principles give us an approach to do that. I mean, you know, one aspect of the principles which I've learned is that we're not our thinking. There is a deeper self. There's a deeper part of our being. But in the organisational world, I sometimes call it, it's like an ego magnet, and you know, you just have a look around you. Look around you. You know, there's hierarchy. Even if people say there's no hierarchy, there is a hierarchy there. You know, just look at job titles. You know, you got senior buyer or buyer. You got, you know, the manager or CEO. There's different parts of the organisations gets seen on as having more kudos than the others. You know, look at distribution versus marketing. There are expectations of jobs. There's reputation. So all of these, you know, when you're looking at things like reputation, if I start to thinking about my reputation, then my ego is going to can easily get sucked into that kind of idea. So the whole thing I feel is coming to a head now, and the other thing about organisations is, if it's an ego magnet, it's a concept magnet. So you just hear all of the different things and all the different ideas and ways of doing things, and nothing's coming to mind now. But you know, lots of the sayings in organisations are conceptual, like we need to get more leverage on this, or we need to step up to the plate, or I can't think of, but you got the idea. And so there's just this big ball of just stuff. I mean, I'm not saying that's not working for lots of organisations, but it is. But there's another way in which we can achieve much more than that without the efforting. And it's looking beyond our ego, beyond our conceptual mind, and looking to that space within all of us, which is where we're going to get all of which is where the source of all answers come from anyway, however they manifest. And so,
to me, it feels like it's all coming up to a crescendo in business. You know, that in the world. Out of this, it's like the phoenix from the fire. I think out of this, there's going to be something different. You know, I'm really hopeful for the world, even with everything that's going on at the minute.
Me too.
And yeah, no matter what's going on in the world, for me, it's like something is going to break through that's different.
Yes.
And I think the thing for me as well, it's like everything seems so complicated, everything seems so complex. And the thing I really love about the principles is they're so simple. It's like you bring everything down to, it's like the absolute simplest part, and understanding that simplest part makes all the rest of it so much easier to deal with. We did a paper recently about, I think we called it leading in why the world needs more natural leaders, I think we called it. We wondered about calling it leading in a VUCA world. This volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. To remember them all.
That's why we didn't call it that, because we can't remember it.
Way too complicated to remember.
And then it draws your ego into it,
But it's one of the things that we said in that paper is we are absolutely designed to deal with this world, to deal with the volatility and the uncertainty and the complexity and the ambiguity. When we remember how it works and how simply it works, when all of this stuff then settles down, it makes it so that it's so much easier to deal with that. And you don't have to work things out ahead of time. Just knowing how it works, bringing you back to the present moment, bringing you back to that wisdom that we all have within us, enables everybody to deal with all of this stuff. And this is what we've been seeing, because organising this charity event that we were telling you about really is it's been VUCA. But seeing how we're riding that in terms of, experiencing the highs and the lows, experiencing the stress and the frazzle, but also knowing that underneath it we're all okay. Without us sharing the principles and without us saying anything about the principles, there are other people around us who are being affected by the way that and I'm not saying that in a kind of an egoic, way, look at what we're doing and how it's affecting people. We know that in a genuine way, people are being affected because they're seeing how we're dealing with this, how the principles are helping us, and it kind of acts like a tuning fork for other people. So this is I know we've completely gone off the question. Let's just launch right in there and get to the heart of everything. But it's like, that resonates out. So we don't have to even speak about the principles, we don't have to share the principles. Just us understanding the principles and living our life in a much easier way permeates out, it percolates out, it like ripples out, like you drop a stone in the pond and the ripples go right out. And people are being affected and not even knowing that being affected. But we see the effects on people without having said a single word about the principles.
So can I dive in and kind of ask a next?
Yeah, we'll let you in. Whose Zoom call is this?
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant.
And what's kind of coming to me is to ask the question, because you both referred to this quite a few times, was the principles, because there's a good chance anyone watching this, people that are coming to the conference, maybe don't even know what that means. They might be highly new to this conversation. So do you mind maybe talking a little bit about what that means to you, what the principles are?
Yeah.
Kind of what they might get in the room around that as well.
So the thing that I would say is, like, there's no principles.
That's
there's nothing. I'm
just going to write this. I'm going to write this bit down.
There's nothing to learn, and there's nothing to remember, and there's nothing to know. And I know that sounds entirely contradictory to anything anybody else has ever learned at school or, training courses or whatever. But it's like it's just having a very, very simple understanding about how humans work, how the world works, really. It's like there's an intelligence that works through us. We have an awareness, and we have all this thinking that creates our experience. So there's nothing else to know. So, like, you don't have to work that one out. You don't have to kind of go, okay, so tell me a bit more about this and tell me a bit more about that. Because if that's all you see, if that's all you remember, like there's an intelligence that works through me, I'm conscious of what's going on, and I've got this thinking going on that I'm conscious of, and that's creating my experience. It's like there's really not much else to know. I mean, I know we're going to talk about it for a bit longer than...
So, you know, when we're talking about we're talking about the principles in terms of mind, consciousness, and thought, which is what Maria is just outlining there. Mind, the intelligence of life. We were having somebody would think it's probably a bit of a bonkers conversation, but we're looking out in our garden just this way the other week, and we just noticed, we've got a squirrel. We've got a name for him. He's called Mr. Squiz. And we don't know. We think it's just one squirrel. It's probably not. It's probably different. and also, he's French, so we actually call him Monsieur Squiz. But
yeah.
One of the things, and this is a really keynote speech that I do in organisations, by the way, so it's probably worth listening to this about Monsieur Squiz. But anyway, one of the things that we just struck us about the squirrel, he was really, really busy going about. We've got a hazelnut tree at the back, collecting hazelnuts and just going on little trips up and down the garden. So he's picking, carrying them in his mouth, and he'd sometimes take them to the front, and then he'd bury them, and then he'd do all sorts of stuff. He's buried them in my plant pots on the patio, all sorts of places. That's how you get these kind of like weird trees growing in but at a very simple level, we're talking about there is an intelligence behind all life, which is informing and guiding us for the best interests of all of us, whether we're a human or an animal or a plant. There is an intelligence of life that's guiding us. And that's just the same way. There, as far as we know, there is no squirrel school, is there? They're not. I don't think they do any. I don't think they're coached. There's no one-to-one stuff. No, but seriously,
there's no action plan.
Seriously, we talked about this for ages. There's no action.
Can you imagine the conversations going on here?
Just on a simple level, how does a squirrel know when to start storing the nuts for the winter? How do they know? How do they know what to do? How does a bird know how to make a nest? How do birds know when to migrate and where to migrate to? So, there's this whole, and we're just looking at the animal kingdom, but, and we're part of that. And that's also true for us.
Yeah.
But for that which gets in our way, innocently, we and it's not like it doesn't help and guide us. It's always there in support and guiding with us, even when we don't think we're listening to it, or listening to it, inverted commas. It's still there, but it comes through and guides us and lives through us much more easily and much more elegantly when we haven't got a load of stuff that's just clouding that. We've perhaps over millennia, we've moved away from that. We've moved away from, the much more of our natural instinct. And look where it's got us. Look where it's got us in terms of separating us from nature and the impact on nature. And the beauty is that the consciousness of the world is awakening to that. There are, I believe, green shoots of awakening where. Anyway, I'm going off subject, but that's how I see mind. Just at a very simple thing like that. It's the same thing that happens to us when something occurs to us. We go, oh, that's an interesting idea. I'll do that. And it's the idea that really makes sense and works for everybody as well. And that's one of the things about the intelligence of life. It works for the whole, for all involved, systemically, ecologically. Yeah, so that's what I would say about mind.
Is that? Do you think that's enough about the principles? Just
well, I was going to say,
I think that's a nice little taster, kind of pointing people in the direction, and definitely there will be more about that sort of thing during the conference. And definitely, you know, if anyone is in the room and they're still a little bit like, I'm not quite sure, there definitely will be time to speak to any one of the speakers. And I know, you know, there's going to be other people in the room who are happy to put their hands up and have conversations with anyone who is, you know, if they're feeling confused or anything. So I'm sure if somebody came up to you and asked you to continue this conversation, they've heard this and they want to know more, Ash, I'm sure you would be open to.
Yeah. I was just getting up ahead of steam about Squirrel World then.
Two things were coming to me when you were speaking about the squirrel. One was like that whole doing things for everyone. I was kind of thinking, I bet like the squirrel buries those nuts and then on purpose he would, not for him necessarily, but like this intelligence would get him to forget a couple of them so that there's been some seeds planted that can kind of grow. And how else would they have got planted in the earth?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, and then I was thinking about my little grandson who's now 6 months old, and kind of when you were saying, how do they know how to do these things? The amount of things that my 6-month-old grandchild is just doing, and it's like, we do, obviously you interact with him and when he does something we all clap or smile or what, but he's just doing stuff. You know, how does he know when to sit? How did he know when to be born? How did he know, you know, how to grow his hair? How did he know how to be a human being? And he's just developing, and it's like so amazing to watch it. So we definitely are a part of that nature. And then we have this ego and this thinking that kind of says, no, not me, I'm a little bit above that. And we get into trouble.
It's also really helpful. I mean, I don't want to give ego such a bad deal, because it's all part of it's all come from the same place. It's come, you know, it comes from mind. It's thought in action. You know, without some of this self-created identity, we probably wouldn't do half the stuff that we've done as a human race. So I don't want to give it too raw a deal, but it can, like, you know, cause us. It can cause significant, and does cause significant issues as well, because people are not understanding that. Like we can have egos, and you know, Lord knows I've got mine. But
or Ash would say no.
I'm Lord. I'm Lord. I'm
Lord. No, because I'm sure you're going to head in this direction anyway with that, or it feels like a good place to go. At the conference, you know, we've called our conference mental health and well-being, because people understand, you know, if we say principles, people are like, what does that mean? But people understand, you know, in industry, in business, in normal, ordinary day-to-day life, all over the place, we see people struggling with mental health and well-being. So how do you see what we are sharing helpful in that arena? You know, whether it is for a business, whether it is for a human, whatever, how do you see this as being helpful in the, you know, for mental health and well-being?
Yeah.
Do you want to go?
And I think, well, it is making it, the understanding of the 3 principles is making a huge impact out there around the world in terms of improving people's mental well-being. And one of the things that, and I'm not an expert in mental well-being, I'm an expert on, I think, on my own, how it's helped my own mental well-being. But one of the things that I think is happening, and I don't mean to say this and to diminish the impact and the pain that a suffering could be, but a lot of mental illness is, one way of thinking about it is that we just get chronically fixated and caught up in our thinking. All right. And I know that there might be things beyond that, but in the kind of the kind of people that I work with and I come across in the organisational world, that's one way of describing it, without being disrespectful. And I can relate that to myself. Is that if you think about when we get caught up in our thinking, or when we're worried or stressed about something, what we're doing is we're just going round and round and round in our heads, within our ego system stuff, and we feel our thinking, as you know. And once we start thinking about things and predicting things that might go wrong, or what somebody might say to us, and how we're going to get through the day and all that kind of stuff, we'll get feelings associated with that. Another way of saying that is it's suffering. And so getting caught up in your thinking causes suffering. Getting chronically fixated and caught up in your thinking causes real suffering. And what it is that once you get to understand the principles, you start to understand that we are not our thinking. We get a sense that there's a surface self, which is our sense of identity and our ego and who we think we are, and our personality and all of that kind of stuff. But below that, there's a deeper self, which is our pure consciousness, our pure being, our true self. And in contrast to our kind of thought system that can go round and round and round, if we think we are that, one of the things about our thinking is that it's in constant state of flux. Sometimes we feel we can have a good quality thinking, sometimes it's kind of okay, and sometimes it's lower quality thinking. And in our ego, and as it's moving, our feelings are following that, and they can get a sense of being out of control with it. But this is us speaking for ourselves, once I start to understand that world, for want of a better better word, is not who I am, and I am that which is able to observe that's just a phenomena, or something that arises in my consciousness. And in contrast to that world that can be polarized, should, shouldn't, right, wrong, this way, that way, our deeper or truer self, or that which observes that, is not in flux, is not suffering, is our source of joy, of love, and inspiration. And so once people start to understand that what's going on in their personal mind isn't who they are, and that whilst you can't control what comes into your head, what you can do is you can once you understand it, you can just allow the natural trajectory of thought to take its route, which is to pass. Just that very simple understanding. There's no more. I know there's more understanding than that, but just at that very simple stage, people get a sense of separation, a sense of relief. And because what happens is in that world that I've just described, it can be quite brittle and subject to the straw on the camel's back, because we think it's an outside stuff outside doing this stuff to us inside. And that's another important distinction, is that you get to see how our experience is created within us, and it's not something that's done to us. And that's really I found that really liberating. And so what we're doing is, when we're not in that world, we are naturally resilient. Because that place is naturally resilient, it is calm, and it's not, to use another metaphor that's used a lot, we're not the waves on the sea. We are the sea, and there's a deeper aspect to us in our being, and that's still, calm, and all the things I said before. And for my personally, what I found is the more I've understood that, and the more I've been able to, through grace, let my thinking pass, and the more I've slipped naturally into a deeper space of quiet and love, the more that's been healing to me. The more I've been able, I've gone beyond coping. It's not just coping through it. I've actually taken on and been more productive and done more in my life otherwise. So I think it's got a huge, the three principles are a huge amount. It's contributing hugely around the world. Just as Maria said earlier on, just these very fundamental, simple truths that speak to people beyond the words and beyond the concept. And that in itself, as you know, really gives people hope as well.
It's completely pointing to people's well-being rather than focusing on their mental unhealth. I mean, when we talk about mental health, most people are talking about unhealth, like, mental illness. Although, there's an awful lot of people going through life in an unhealthy state of mind, who wouldn't be described as having a mental illness, but are not in a healthy state of mind. They're not looking at their own well-being. They're getting through life despite the state of mind. And so the principles really point people back to their innate mental well-being. And that's what's so brilliant about it, in such an easy and simple way. Like when people start to see that, they don't need to have tools and techniques. They don't need to manage their thinking. They don't need to understand where their thinking started. They don't need to blame, what happened in their lives for what's going on in their lives. They can let go of that stuff that's gone in their mind. Not that they're doing any of these things. So that when they start to see and understand that there's a part of them, and it feels like a different part of them to what's going on in here, but it's actually the whole. It's when they feel and experience their wholeness, then all this stuff that goes on in our heads becomes much less of a deal to deal with. It's not to say that we have a completely clear, calm, peaceful mind. What it means is that we know that the calm and the peace and everything has got nothing to do with what's going on in our heads. It can experience the peace and the calm despite what's going on in our heads. And that in itself just makes everything so much easier to deal with. So all of this stuff that we've got going on in our minds is not such a big deal. And just that fact enables it to go much more quickly as well. Anyway, I mean, we still get caught up in stuff, but you don't get caught up in it in the same way at all, because you know that you've got this innate well-being. And that's what the principles really points to. Like, just help people to see that they have an innate mental well-being that so many people have forgotten that they've got, because they were born with it. Like your baby, your grandson, like he's got, he's not aware that he's got total mental well-being, but he has got total mental well-being. And yeah, some of the conditioning will condition some of that out of him, unfortunately, because that's human nature. But luckily for him, he's in a family where he's going to get reminded that he's got this mental well-being for the rest of his life. God help him.
Yeah, I'm glad you put that bit in.
Because there will be times when he probably wishes he didn't have this understanding.
and that's why, and you'll know this, is when we're sharing with people, they'll often say, I kind of know this. I kind of knew it. It's, I don't know, can't put my finger on it. And, Dickon Bettinger's book, Coming Home, people often say that you get a sense of being at home once they let go of this world and move to, their truer self. There is a sense of coming home with it. And there's nothing to learn. There's nothing to do. There's no disciplines involved with it. In fact, that's what attracted me initially to the 3 principles. I thought, I like the idea of this. You don't have to do anything, but your life changes and gets transformed. I'll give this a go. But it's true. It's true, isn't it? It's true.
Yeah, absolutely. And very much like with my little grandson, I can see, you know, he has his moments, like he has the screaming abdabs, you know, he goes mad, and then the next thing you kind of go, oh look, and he's like, oh, something shiny, happy smile. He absolutely flows in and out of the perfect mental health, and then he kind of has some thinking about that he doesn't like his nappy or his car seat or whatever it is that's going on, and he goes crazy, and it's gone. He doesn't.
And I think that really points to the nature of thought, because we get caught. Most people think thought is the content of our thinking. Now, a baby doesn't have any content of thinking. It has no language. You know, we put language to, or we try to. I mean, a lot of it's going on and we don't even know what's going on, really. But that really is a testament to the energy of thought, because a baby experiences every single emotion, every single feeling through the energy of thought, without him knowing the content of it or the context of it, or where did it start from. You know, what happened in the 6 months prior to this that created this behavior in me and this thinking in me? Like, there isn't any of that yet, is
I
there?
need to talk to somebody about it in some way.
It's kind of that he's experiencing the energy of thought constantly, and then as we learn language and we get older, then we start to put a language to this energy. And then that in itself then starts contributing to the feelings that we're experiencing. But that really, really does point to, we all have this energy of thought, and it comes and goes without you having to do anything. You know, you have to watch a baby you just described that happen to. That's within the realms of possibility for each and every one of us. I wish I could get there again. Luckily, I have enough understanding to be partially there, but you know, it's like that's the possibility that we can have all of this stuff going on in our minds and have that kind of relationship with it. So maybe he'll learn, and maybe he won't, maybe it doesn't matter, not to have the screaming abdabs at some point. You know, it's like, you know, I might have a screaming abdab in my head, but I might not necessarily, you know, put it out there. You know, so maybe, you know, there's elements of that going on, but I can have exactly the same relationship with that thinking going on in my head as he's having. Like, I can have the screaming abdabs in my head, and I know I don't have to act on it, because I know in a minute it's going to go, and then another thought comes in, and I'm perfectly okay again.
So just as we've got Steve and we've got Colette with us, so I just wondered, has anyone got a question or anything they would like to add or ask Maria and Ash before we finish for today?
Yeah, we didn't ask you how much time we had today. We just have it on.
No,
until we feel like
we don't kind of put a huge time on it. It's just, it's nice for people to get a feel for who you're going to be at the conference and what you might say, and you know.
Yeah, it might be somebody else at the conference. This is me today.
We'll bring you out in some, you know, in some nicer. We'll have some dry ice, and we'll bring you out today, Maria. Who are you going to be?
Today, Eamon, I'm going to be.
Sorry, was there any questions?
Fine if there's no questions.
I think I have more of a comment. I have enjoyed this so much.
Yeah, me too.
I really have. It's like, and I think that, Debs, you asked the question for anybody not listening, was that the great gift was not having to listen to every single detail. It was being said, and realizing that somewhere along the line something will just make sense to me. And it was Mr. Squirrel. Now, who would have thought the incredible things that you guys have said, but there was something about Mr. Squirrel, it just like, it kind of landed. And when Deb says about the collecting the nuts, and there might be one or two that he's forgot, And it just really hit me like, we always have enough.
Yes.
There is always enough in reserve, where I think my old mindset was trying to grab onto it and hold it, and we can't with thought. So I really was like, oh my goodness, who would have thought about all those things that you guys have said that would have come out? And so what was beautiful for me was just listening to that, and what you were saying was, as I rested in a beautiful feeling, I remembered who I am. So I could still listen without nowhere to get to, and just rest in that. Okay, this is, and I love what you just said there, Maria. We don't know who's going to turn up then, because it's like in this moment.
I didn't hear what he said there.
Who turn up? Who are you going to turn up?
Oh yeah.
So in this moment, it's like, I don't want to hold on to Mr. Squirrel's story for the rest of my life. Or kind of, even though he's a great metaphor.
Leave that to me.
Yeah.
It's your squirrel, if you don't mind. Whiz.
Yeah.
I really love what you just said, Steve, about the listening piece. You know, for anybody who's coming to the conference, that not letting the words wash over you, rather than trying to grab hold of the words and trying to see the words, or learn the words, or, you know, whatever that is that our intellect tries to get hold of. I think that's a really important point, that if people are attending the conference, is just relax, kind of chill out, not worry about what people are saying, but let the words wash over and something lands. And what the people might not realize is that it's not, I mean, I know you've mentioned Mr. Squiz, but it's not the words that land. It's something that, what lands is something from within them.
Yeah.
Like they're actually not even listening out for it, but it's something will occur to them. So I really like what you said about, you know, letting people, it's kind of an encouraging people who attend the conference to relax and chill out, and, you know, not try and learn something as such.
That's a really lovely point, actually, because I know, you know, we put this out there as a conference, and mental health and well-being, what have you. And I know sometimes that can feel really big and scary to people, and they've got to come with their proper clothes and with their pad and pen and make sure they know something when they leave they didn't know when they came. And it is beautiful that actually these 3 days are definitely an invitation to just relax and see what happens when you don't come in with that mindset that we often go to these sort of things with, you know.
Yeah, I need to come away with 3 things. three strategies for finding my mental well-being.
Yeah.
Really don't need any of that. Yeah. And it's trusting, and it's hard for people to trust that to start off with.
Yeah.
Because it's so not what they've been told how to be like. You know, not how they've learned to be like, not realizing that everything that they've learned in the past has actually come via insight, but it looks like it's come via a book or a speaker or a teacher or a lecturer or, you know, a manual or whatever it is. I mean, there are certain things, you know, I couldn't learn how to drive my car based on instinct alone. I wouldn't like to put that. So this is like, intellect really has got its place.
Yeah.
But in terms of mental well-being, it's like the mental well-being will come via insight. It won't come via our words or Steve's words, because Steve is one of the other speakers and I can't wait to see him again. It won't come from our words speaking. It will come from, the well-being will come from within them. So in chilling out, in relaxing, in not having expectations of yourselves to learn anything, in just letting go of any concept and goal or whatever that you might come with. It's like, come with the idea that you're just going to have an open heart to whatever might be happening, because in that space the chances of you seeing something that's going to be really helpful is really high. And the chances of you finding anything helpful, if you've come in with an idea of writing everything down that all of us speakers say, the chances of you getting and enabling a piece of wisdom to come through that will hit you is kind of reduced. I'm not saying it won't happen, but you're giving yourself less of a chance of hearing or seeing something new that's going to be helpful.
We're really looking forward to meeting up with you guys again, and and we're looking forward to meeting the people at the conference and seeing people that we met before, old friends and friends to be. So we're really, really looking forward.
I don't know whether you've heard, because we only found out
a couple of days ago.
Yeah, a day or two ago. But Andy is bringing his daughter Emmy again.
Oh,
fantastic!
Oh, yeah, she's going to be great.
Yeah. So for anyone that's watching this, Emmy is, what is she, 14 now? 13, 14?
15,
yeah, 14.
maybe.
She's an absolutely beautiful young lady, and yeah, she's going to be speaking at the conference and sharing what she has seen around this understanding too. So I didn't know when she was coming, because
added bonus to see.
Absolutely added. Yeah, we didn't know her schooling whether she could come, but she's been allowed the time off school, so she's going to be coming to join us. So we're all really excited about that, to have the whole gang back again.
If you come to see anybody else, come to see Emmy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Poor Emmy. We're not putting anything on them or anything, but
yeah, it's just going to be.
Oh, that's great news. Really great news.
The feeling in the room, I'm sure, is going to be amazing. So, well, we can't thank you enough for taking time out this afternoon to
Our pleasure.
kind of put it out
Lovely
there.
to see you all again.
Yeah, we are so excited for the conference. So
to be here before we know it, actually.
Yeah, it will. It will. You did mention that paper thing that you had, that you wrote. I don't know whether you want to bring something like that along to the conference. I don't know whether it's something
we could actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll print some copies off and yeah.
You know, we're very, very keen to kind of allow people, we want things in the room so people can connect with people afterwards if they hear something, if something resonates. You know, we're trying to kind of collaborate with everyone, connect people who want to be connected. So if anything like that, and the same goes for you, Steve, if there's anything you want to bring to contribute, we're going to have tables there for people.
Okay.
You know, I think it would be great if, you know, you don't know, people might find it helpful. And
there's a few new books that have come from around about the Devon area, if I remember rightly.
we are having a book stall. So yeah, we've got some books. Yes, we've written some books, and then we've asked other people to contribute books. So we're going to have a book stall there as well. So that's going to be very good.
Yes. Yes.
Fantastic.
We've got some other little surprises as well for people who buy tickets, but we'll share that another time. So.
Yes, yeah.
You can't tell everybody everything all at once.
No, you need to keep something back. You need to be a bit mysterious, like that squirrel, you know. Okay, that was really wonderful.
Fabulous to catch up with
really
you
good to catch up with you.
Yeah.
Lovely to see
you. Thank you to Steve for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. Look forward to seeing you all in November.
You too.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
What have we done?